Hi there. This video will hopefully show you how to replace your Samsung refrigerator water and ice dispenser lever. I'm going to use an AI voice for the rest of the explanations in this video. It can get a little dramatic, but it's easy to understand.
A number of Samsung refrigerators use the same water and ice dispenser mechanism. I've seen this same one in a lot of different Samsung fridges. The one we are talking about here is the DA6600850A dispenser lever, available on Amazon, link below. These levers, or paddles, are made of a fairly brittle plastic covered with a metal facade. The plastic axle portion of this paddle breaks off easily, and this video will show you how to replace it. The materials used and the spring location are the two main problems. This is the front of the paddle without the metal facade in place. You can pry that facade off the old one with a small screwdriver and/or needle nose pliers and put it on the new one. The new part does not come with the metal faceplate, so make sure you save the one from your broken lever. This is the back of the lever, and this is where you will fold over the tabs after you stick them through the four little slots on the sides. On the top right of this lever, from the back angle, you can see where you will need to latch the torsion spring when you reinstall the lever. This is the thing that is going to give you the most grief in this whole process. Here are the tools that I use to do this. You don't have to use these exact tools, but these are the tools that I ended up having success with after trying quite a few others. Any little piece of double-sided tape will do. I just use this skinny tape because the piece you are going to need will be quite small, as you will see. This is the bottom of the dispenser. The little reddish button in the back is what activates the water, or ice, and a little tab on the back of the dispenser lever presses on that when you push it in. Before you start installing the new lever, it would be a good idea to unplug the fridge and turn off the water supply, if you haven't already. This is a view of the dispenser unit from the side. This hole on the side is where the left side, when facing the refrigerator, of the lever axle is going to fit, and it is also the side that the nasty little torsion spring fits on. There is a little piece of Scotch tape in this photo, because that is what I originally tried to use to hold the spring in place, but that just didn't work for me, at all. It was too flimsy and difficult to handle, and I couldn't get it in place without covering the hole. The double-sided tape was much easier to work with. Here is that hole from the other side, and you can see how I was trying to hold the spring in place with a piece of Scotch tape. It is very difficult to maneuver around up in there once you start trying to fit the lever in place and slide it through both the spring and the hole without the spring slipping out of its retainer slot, which I'll show you in a minute. What worked far better for me was to put a piece of two-sided tape on the retainer spring at the portion that sticks into the retainer hole. My first attempt, shown here, was to put it on the inside of the spring, so that the tape would be in between the spring and the housing, thinking that since it was double-sided tape, it would stick to both the spring and the plastic base and hold it in place while I slipped the axle through. I was incorrect in that assumption. What I found that worked the best, by far, was putting a little piece of this double-sided tape, about 1/4 by 3/8 to 1/2 inch, with the backing still on the outside portion, so that it doesn't stick to your fingers, onto the outside of the portion of the spring that sticks into the retainer hole, just like in this picture. This only uses one side of the double-sided tape, but the tape is thicker and much easier to manage than a flimsy piece of Scotch tape, or something similar. This is the hole on the left side, as you're facing the refrigerator, where the left axle extension on the lever goes and where the torsion spring is going to be. The spring retainer hole is up at the top, just out of view. This is the nasty shot of the whole mechanism again, just for perspective, with the left side axle hole that I've been talking about. So back to the hole on the left side in the back. Then if you look all the way around the back of this thing, somehow, you can see the retainer hole just above and to the left of the axle hole. You are probably not going to be able to actually see this unless you have a good dental mirror or something, but this is what it looks like. That is what the little extension portion of the spring has to slip into and then stay put. The staying put is the hard part of this whole process. Here's a shot of the spring again, showing you the extension that has to fit into that little retainer hole. Ignore the red tape on this shot. This is the one that's on the wrong side. I just wanted to show you the part of the spring that goes into that little retainer slot. So here is that left axle hole with the spring retainer hole above it and to the left again. You will stick the spring using one side of the double-sided tape to this piece of plastic so that the extension is in the small top hole and the circular portion of the spring is over the larger axle hole, more or less. It doesn't have to be exactly over the large hole because you can line it up later pretty easily when you insert the axle. The next step is to fit the lever so that the left side axle extension, which I'm sorry, is missing in this picture because that is what broke off, and this is a picture of the broken lever. As I mentioned, I decided to make this video after I had installed the new lever, and I wasn't about to take it all apart again to get a picture of it. Anyway, here is where that axle extension would be. And this little cutout slot here is where the other end of the spring will need to be moved over to, but you won't do that until you have both ends of the axle successfully in their holes, with the spring still latched in its retaining hole at the top. Sliding the straight end of the spring over this notch is the last thing you need to do to get this lever to work properly. So grab the spring and put a little piece of tape on it like this. Take your lever, yours should have the axle extensions on both sides, this is my broken one again, and carefully insert it into the holes, left side first, being careful to not knock the spring out of its little top retainer hole. If you do, like I did several times, you'll need to reattach it and try again. I used my long, skinny needle nose pliers to position the spring in place, and I used a combination of the angle picks and my finger to press the spring and tape securely in place. Then take your lever, the new one with both axles, and carefully insert it into the left hole first, left side, as you are facing the fridge, making sure that the axle goes through the hole in the spring, without knocking the spring out of its retainer hole, then push the right side axle into the right side hole. It may seem like it's almost going to break when you do this, but the axles are angled at the top so that they will sort of snap into the holes. You can help the process by pulling the right side of the housing out a little as you snap in the right side of the lever. The last thing that you are going to need to do, once you have the lever in both the left and right holes, and your spring still in place, is latch the other end of the spring over the notch on the left side of the lever. This is where that straight end of the spring will need to end up. This is the straight part of the spring that you need to slip around the left side of the lever and onto that slot. To do that, I used this pick to gently position the straight end of the spring so that I could grab it with the end of the screwdriver, and then I used the screwdriver to pry the straight end of the spring over onto the notch on the top left side of the lever. I'm sorry I don't have video of this part of the maneuver, but once you're at this stage, you'll see what I'm talking about.